This is a Crack House Chronicles production.
Welcome to the Crack House Chronicles, your favorite true crime podcast. I am Donnie, and with me is a man that says sneaking a beer into work is pretty easy if you put it in your belly first.
That's right.
That's Dale.
Undercover.
Yeah.
Just watch for the slosh.
Yeah. Just drink it and go on in.
Slosh it down.
Yeah. That's right, dude.
For all the people I work with, we know we're just kidding.
Yep. Yeah. We don't do it. We just make jokes. What's going on today, dude?
I'm just winking, right?
Yeah.
You know, same old, same old.
Yeah, same old, same old.
So you're underwater over there or something, ain't you?
Man, like you last week, on last week's episode, you had the stuffiness. I got the stuffiness this week. Yeah,
I've been eating allergy pills trying to dodge that stuff.
I have too. Just nose. I don't know if it's allergies or what.
I told somebody the other day your little joke about we didn't get much snow this year, but I had 5 inches of pollen in the yard.
Yes, we did. Yeah,
It's awful, isn't it?
I got a joke for everything.
I know.
Yep. You got any good shout outs for anybody you want to talk about, bud?
Well, let me see if we can dig up something over here. Let's see right. Hey, look at that.
Man,
I'm gonna have to get a shot for all this clap going on.
go see a doctor.
Yeah, we got a couple Apple Podcast 5-star reviews we're going to drop on you today. How about that? We got a few in the can, which is amazing to us. So we're going to do 2 today. We're going to go back. This one says, update on Ace Degree, 5 stars. Great job, guys. I love the time and effort you both put on this case. And this comes from P1-Chief.
Or PI Chief.
Oh, you think that's what it is?
I think it's PI.
Oh, PI.
Yeah, that's our buddy.
Oh, well, you should have said that.
Yeah.
I would have known PI Chief. Thanks, Dave. PI Chief.
Yep.
We appreciate that. Thank you. And we appreciate everything you do.
Yeah.
And we were moving right along. This is from A Howard 21 or A Howard 21. Whichever one you want to say.
Whichever one you want to say.
It looks like A Howard, but it could be Howard. Howard.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
A Howard 21.
Anyway, we appreciate it anyway. It is new follower, and I love it here. I am from the Alamance/Chatham County, North Carolina area, but I have family in Lincoln, North Carolina, who first told me about the AC Degree case when the February news broke, and I've been invested in the case ever since, which is how I stumbled upon your show. I've listened to a lot of the other episodes as well, and you guys are great at what you do. This is definitely my favorite podcast to listen to, and I appreciate the work you guys put into it.
Wow.
Thanks so much, Howard 21.
Man, that is awesome.
It is.
I love them 5-star reviews. And
Yeah.
Yep.
People are nice to us sometimes.
They really are.
And we really appreciate you taking the time to type all out. And that means a lot. And thanks for telling friends and family and anybody else and putting stickers on your cards and wearing shirts and anything else you guys do for us, because it makes us feel good.
It really does, man. But if anybody else wants to be like these fine folks and go to Apple Podcasts, you can leave a 5-star rate, and you can also write a review. And that way we know you have done so, and we'll get a notification, and we'll get a big old shout out.
That's right. So thanks a lot, P.I. Wink Wink Chief and A Howard 21.
That's right.
Stars of today.
That's right. Yeah, we're getting a little behind on our Apple Podcast reviews.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is a good problem. So we've doubled up this week, try to get caught up on them.
Well, we don't want people to think we ain't loving them, Don't want to get too far out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we still got more in the can.
I mean, they don't come through right away. As soon as you hit send, it doesn't pop up. I think it's a couple of days or something.
It does. It takes a few days to filter
cycle
through
through
for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like the 5-star shows up before the review shows up. I don't know how it works. It's weird, but yeah.
But it gets here eventually.
Yeah, we get it, and you get a shout out when we do get it.
That's right.
Yeah, eventually. All right, Dale. After this short, quick break, we'll get going in this episode, man.
I can't wait.
All right, dude. We're back.
We are back,
and man, we got a rough case.
Yeah. This is, this kind of thing is kind of odd, because we'll go in a little bit different direction. This case/story is a little bit different than what we usually do. So he's like, oh, this will be cool. We'll cover this. It's a good story to tell. But man, the deeper we get into this thing, it's worse than an onion, isn't it?
It is.
With the layers.
It's a lot of facets to it.
And it's it's infuriating. It's embarrassing. It's depressing. Oh man, you're just going to be pissed off and sad all at the same time.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and put a little disclaimer. They might be a curse word pop out of mine, because this thing really pissing me off. And we did a lot of research on this thing. I'm going to tell you,
let me say something right here. You have done more research on this than you have done a lot of other cases we've done.
Yeah.
I mean, you have took a deep dive into this. And I first told you about this case a while back, and you was all in it.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what are you talking about?
And it's not one of them stories you don't hear much about.
Right. And then I listened to a couple podcasts. I'm like, okay. And then I listened to Aaron Kimmerl's book, who is an anthropologist, I believe that's her title, who came in and done a lot of work, and we'll talk about that later on. And then I also listened to Roger Dean Kaiser's book, who was a boy who was at the school, and his life story. And he's become an author and wrote a bunch of other books since then. Whew, man,
This is tough.
yeah, I'm like, I was listening to his book, and I told Donnie, I said, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through the first damn chapter. The first 30 seconds, I was about to lose it. It was like, this guy, what a life.
Yeah. But today we're talking about the Florida School for Boys, and is also known as the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys. But this school
Or the industrial, it's an industrial school for boys. So it changed a bunch of times.
changed names
I
many
think
times.
when Roger went there, it was the industrial school.
Yeah. But this school was a reform school operated by the state of Florida in the Panhandle of Florida in the town of Marianna.
Yeah.
Now, just a little brief background on this school, and we're going to get into more of it, but it was incorporated on January the 1st, 1900.
Yeah.
So this is an old school.
You think?
Yeah, and it ran up until June 30th of 2011. So it's not that long ago. So 111 years for this school, Dale.
Right.
But
And before we get too deep in it, reform school, for a lot of people who don't know, I look up the definition for sure. It is an institution to which youthful offenders are sent as an alternative to prison.
yeah,
Now, that's what reform school dictionary is, and then we'll tell you what this one is.
for troubled boys.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. But there was a second campus that was opened in the town of Okeechobee in 1955. And Dale, for a time, this was the largest juvenile reform institution in the United States, man.
It was huge.
Yeah. And throughout its 111-year history, the school, it gained a reputation for abuse, beatings, rape, torture, and even murder of students by the staff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the good parts.
Yeah. And despite periodic investigations and changes of leadership and promises to improve, these allegations of cruelty and abuse, they continued, man.
Well, all they would do would come in and maybe they'd fire somebody and change the name, and nothing would change.
No. But in 2009, the school, it failed a state inspection.
You reckon?
Yeah, and the governor at that time, he ordered a full inspection. And many of the historic and recent allegations of this abuse and violence were confirmed by separate investigations by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in 2010, and also by the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. Now, state authorities, they closed the school permanently in 2011, like we talked about. And at the time of its closure, it was part of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice. But Dale, over the years, there were questions about the number of deaths at the school and the high number of unmarked graves at this school.
Yeah. Well, for years it was supposed to be 31, because somebody said there was 31 in they had a spot called Boot Hill, their little cemetery on campus.
Yeah, this is a graveyard they had on campus cemetery. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at one time there was some markers, and then something happened, and then some people went later and put some crosses up, and they put like 31, because that was always the tale, that there was 31.
Yep. And that lady you mentioned, the Erin Kimmerl,
Yes.
she was from the University of South Florida, and she was an anthropologist and also a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2012, this is when her team, they identified 55 burials on the ground.
Yeah, most of these was outside this little cemetery.
Yes.
Yes.
Wasn't even in the cemetery.
Right.
And documented nearly 100 deaths at the school.
Right. So 70 more than they said.
That's right.
And then some people there were several in one hole. It was just ridiculous.
And then in January of 2016, not that long ago, Erin Kimmerl, she issued her final report, having made 7 DNA matches and 14 presumptive identifications of remains.
Right.
And they continued to work on all these identifications. And there were 3 times as many black as white students died that were buried there at the Dozier School.
I can't imagine.
No.
Yeah, and all this stuff was everything was unmarked. It was nobody's name was anywhere. And you have to remember, a lot of these kids that were sent here, And these kids ranged in age from 3 to 21.
Yeah.
3
years old.
And this place, I think it was like 1,200 acres beginning, but eventually it would be 1,400 acres.
They added on 200 more acres.
Yeah. And that was kind of sketchy as well. But, yeah, so they'd do with all this stuff and have these people here, and then everything, if something happened, you would have to remember that a lot of these kids came from either orphanage or
wards of the state or something.
Wards of the state, or very, very poor families or something.
Yeah.
So something happens while they're here, they die, they get killed, whatever happens, they just bury them. Okay, well, and then notify you later. Well, little Johnny got pneumonia last week and he's dead, so we buried him. And most families couldn't afford to bring him home anyway. Or
no
bring him
documentation
home.
at all.
Yeah, no, nothing. It's just take a word for it. And then people would go up there and try to find their loved ones, and like, they're over there, maybe. I mean, because they didn't know. They just put them in the ground.
Yeah.
And I say that there's probably kids buried all over that acreage. I don't think it's just that little bit. I think they took a lot to the woods and everything else. I just, after reading
and probably
get frustrated.
Probably even outside the land that they owned.
Well, I mean, you got 1,400 acres. That's not plenty of acres to hide something.
But just a little bit more background on this school, Dale. When it opened in 1900, this Marianna, Florida site was an open campus, like you said, about 1,400 acres.
Yeah, no fences. Didn't have no fences.
Nothing.
Not at the beginning. They have them later on, but not in the beginning.
And the site was originally divided into 2 sub-campuses. There was a south side, or number 1, and it was for white students, and the north side, or number 2 side, and it was for colored students. Now, the colored students, they sent all the kids that were non-white there.
Yeah.
It
wasn't black and white. It was white and everybody else.
Pretty much, yeah. It didn't matter if you were Hispanic, Oriental,
Indian,
whatever. And also you talked about the cemetery that was located on the north side, where the colored boys was. It was known as Boot Hill Cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And most of these graves were unmarked, and records of many of the documented 100 students who died at this facility were lacking. And there was a 2014 report from an extensive forensic investigation that was carried out by this Dr. Aaron Kimmerell from the University of South Florida, beginning in 2011. And she said that the buried remains of 55 students were found, including numerous remains found outside the cemetery boundaries in the woods or brush areas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Aaron, her team, they've been trying to identify them, and some of them through the use of DNA, but many were still unidentified at the time the report was issued. And in 1990 to 1991, the North Side campus, this was the colored side, it was permanently closed. Now, on this campus, Dale, in 1929, there was an 11-room concrete block detention building that was built. And it was also containing cells for white students. And it was constructed to house incorrigible or violent students.
Yeah.
And the site at the time, not being fenced, it was called the White House.
Yeah.
This little building. And in the 1950s and 60s, this building was the site of most of the beatings of the students.
Yes.
Black boys were punished in the form of whippings and beatings in this White House.
Everybody got whipped in the White House.
Everybody did, yeah, but were detained.
And it was White House because it was painted white, I think. It was that with the black trim, and it was just terror is all it was going to be.
It was a house of terror, right? No doubt.
Yeah, and at some point, I think it was more the kids on the colored side, with my quote fingers, called the building the ice cream factory, which I think some of the white kids did too. But they said that the reason they called that the ice cream factory is because all the colors that their backs and backsides would be after these beatings.
The black and the blue.
Black and blue and red and pink and blood and just... God, man, this just pisses me off so bad.
Extreme beatings, man. I
mean,
so
they would call it the White House or the ice cream factory, because you're going to be all these colors when you come out.
Yeah.
If you come out. And a lot of boys didn't come out.
No, they didn't. And we're going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
But after corporal punishment at the school was abolished in 1967, the White House building, or the ice cream factory, this little building was closed and was used for storage. And in 2008, in response to allegations of the extreme beatings and torture that took place there, the state officials sealed the building in a public ceremony, and they left a memorial plaque there.
Right.
And it's remained empty ever since. Now, at the time of the U.S. Department of Justice investigation that was in 2010-11, shortly before this facility was closed. This campus was fenced in a 159-acre high-risk residential facility for 104 boys aged 13 to 21 who had been committed there by the court. Their average length at the Dozier School was 9 to 12 months.
But it was also up to the people of the Dozier School.
Yes.
I mean, a judge would send you there. I guess we'll get more into this as we go through and start over with the history of this damn place. But go ahead, because I'm just getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to leave nothing out, because they would send kids there, and you don't know how long you were going. Whenever they was done working you or whatever, that's when you got out, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
If you got out.
Now, according to the 2010 abuse investigation by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the school was first organized under an 1897 act of the legislature and began operations on this Marianna campus on January the 1st, 1900.
And that Marianna is Marianna, Marianna.
That's right. And it was titled, or given the name of the Florida State Reform School. And it was overseen by 5 commissioners appointed by the governor. At the time, his name was William Dunnington Bloxham. And they were to operate the school and make biennial reports to the legislature.
Now, I think when this thing was first built and started, I think it was a good thing.
Absolutely.
Or it was intended to be.
Good intentions, yeah.
Yes.
But at some time thereafter, the commissioners were replaced by the governor and cabinet of Florida, acting as the board of commissioners of state institutions. And in 1914, the name was changed to the Florida Industrial School for Boys.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1957, to the Florida School for Boys. And in 1955, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, the Okeechobee campus opened. And in 1967, the name of the Marianna campus was officially changed to the Arthur G. Dozier School for Boys in honor of the former superintendent. And this Dozier School for Boys was the name it kept until it was closed.
Right.
Now, going back, in 1903, just a few years after the school was opened.
3 years.
Yeah, an inspection reported that children at the school were commonly kept in leg irons.
Leg irons, man. Prison.
And according to a 2012 interim report by the University of Florida, which was commissioned to investigate the cemetery and burials by this Aaron Kimmerell,
Right.
the school was investigated by the state 6 times during its 13 years of operation.
His first 13 years.
First 13, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
the first 13 years it was open, they was investigated 6 times.
yes. Now, get this, too. In 1914, there was a fire
Yeah.
at the school. And it was in one of the dorms at the school.
Yes.
And this fire killed an estimated 6 to 10 students and 2 staff members.
Right.
11 students were recorded as having died in the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic, but they were never named.
Okay, now,
Yes.
we're going to go back and talk about this damn fire.
Yeah, let's talk about the fire
This dormitory was a 3-story dormitory.
building. Yes.
First floor was the kitchen. Okay?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, they went in there to this place and they noticed that there was no fire escapes in this building. So they had fire escapes installed to the second floor. Okay, on the outside, ladders. Okay, well, them fire escapes did not go to the 3rd floor. Okay, that was just the outside ladders went in second floor. When this fire started, it starts burning. Well, the kids trying to get out. Well, guess what? These fire escape doors, they locked, chain shut.
Chain shut, yeah.
Yeah. And the keys, they said, well, the keys are on first floor. Anybody had access to the keys. Well, guess what? The superintendent had the damn keys in his pocket, and he was not even on the grounds. He was gone. Now, if it ain't bad enough that they were busting windows and trying to get out the second floor to come downstairs or run it, trying to get through the fire, the boys on the 3rd floor were chained to the damn wall or chained to their beds.
Yeah.
To, quote, keep them from running away. So now these kids are chained, and this building is burning down. And they ain't got nowhere to go. And then he said the people outside are hearing them just, the floors giving away on the inside, and them boys are just screaming as the floors give away, and they just fall further.
Being burned alive.
Yeah, burned alive.
Yeah.
They said some people were trying to go out through the roof, go out through the windows, climb on the roof, but where the hell are you going to go if you climb on the roof? It's going to burn.
Be going down.
Unless you're just going to jump off the building, and I guess that'd be a better alternative than burning alive, but yeah, they locked these boys in this damn place, chained the door shut, chained them to the damn wall, chained them to the bed. But, and it's like, well, it was 6 to 10. They don't really know, because you know what? They went and buried them all before anybody knew.
Yeah.
And when they were digging them up, they just found charred pieces of boys all in one grave, and burnt wood and everything. I mean, it was just,
Just mass graves.
It's just ridiculous, is what it is. These people, this place.
Yeah. I don't see how this place operated as long as it did.
Hell no, it shouldn't have been. After these first 6 things in the first 13 years, they should have been shut down. Well, it went, when they changed it, I think when they changed it to the Florida Industrial School, that's when they started doing all this stuff. They were making bricks, turned into brick, and they were printing, had a big printing press, and they were doing stuff for government papers and all this stuff. So they were making money off these boys. So it's basically turning slowly from a reform school where they're trying to help these kids. I think when they took these 5 commissioners off, and the government took it over, and these politicians started looking at it going, wait, we can make a lot of money off this, and we got all the free labor we want. You think about it. They're sending kids that are from 3 years old to 21 years old. And this guy that I read the book, well, I listened to it, so I count as reading. But anyway, his offense was, he had a real terrible life, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But the reason he got sent to this school, he said, was because he climbed a tree, he rode a girl's bicycle, basically without permission, and he went to the bathroom without asking.
And he got sent to the reform school.
And they were tired of messing with him and sent him to the reform school.
Wow.
He had a rough life before that. He didn't have a mom or dad. He was sent to a step grandparents that didn't care about him and beat the hell out of him. And I don't know, it just gets worse from there. But I don't want to get too sidetracked in the weeds and that. But yeah, I just think it's just, I don't know.
But you're talking about the white boys that had they would be making bricks or had the printing shop and doing those other things, learning a trade. The black kids, the black boys, they worked in another part of the campus. They worked in the fields.
Well, this place was self-sustained, so yeah.
Yeah. They worked fields, tended to the animals.
Slaughtered the animals, butchered the animals, worked the fields, crops, out there plowing, and then getting all the crops in. So they were self-sustained as far as they were feeding themselves and everything, but they was also making a shit ton of money off all this stuff that they were doing too.
Yeah.
So the kids in the colored campuses were basically slave labor. Mm-hmm. I'll go ahead and say it because it is what it was.
It was what it was.
Now the boys on the other side, they were working too, but it was a different kind of work. And you say learning a trade, but they were just working. This is what you do. You go do it. Like the guy in the book, he worked first, was in the hospital, and he couldn't see people died, so he went out, from there, and they stuck him in laundry. We said when he left, all he knew how to do was press a shirt. He ain't really teach him nothing else. You go over there and run that thing, you press shirts, that's what you do.
And on top of all this, Dale, there was no education going on.
No.
Nothing.
They had a schoolroom, and they would do assignments, but he said they would go to school one day and then go to work. There was no teacher. There was just all them guards standing there staring at you, make sure you done your assignment, and then just go to work.
Yeah.
Don't talk to nobody. Don't look at nobody. Don't smile. If you smile too much, don't smile enough, you take you to the White House. And you did not want to go to the White House.
No, you didn't. And we're going to get into the White House here in just a little bit.
Yeah, get me fired up.
Now in 1968, Florida Governor Claude Kirk said, after a visit to the school, this is where he found overcrowding and poor conditions, that somebody should have blown a whistle a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it sounded like this guy saw some stuff.
And this is in 68 now.
1968.
This is 38 years.
And at this time, the school housed 564 boys, some for offenses as minor as school truancy, running away from home, or this incorrigibility, including cigarette smoking.
Yeah.
They get sent to that school for cigarette smoking.
You get caught smoking cigarettes.
Yep. And at this time, the boys ranged in age from 10 to 16 years old. And in 1969, as part of a government reorganization, the school came under the management of the Division of Youth Services of the newly created Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services. And in 1996, this Health and Rehabilitative Services was organized or reorganized by the state of Florida of Children and Families.
Yeah, they changed it to the Florida Department of Children and Families.
Yes. Now, according to a 2009 report investigation by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, there were 81 school-related deaths of students from 1911 to 1973. 31 of these boys were said to be buried on the school grounds with other bodies, shipped home to families or buried in unknown locations. And there were 31 simple crosses as grave markers at the cemetery, and it was installed in the 1960s and 1990s.
Right.
But they have been found not to correspond with any specific burials.
No, they just knew they was 31 markers, so in the 90s they just felt bad and wanted to put some kind of thing out there to honor these kids, and so they just randomly went and put up 31 crosses.
Yep.
They didn't know any different because nothing's marked.
That's right. But in 2012, the interim report by this Dr. Erin Kimmerell, her team found a total of 98 documented deaths at the school from 1914 to 1973, including 2 staff members.
Yeah, and those 2 staff members were killed in that fire.
Yes.
You know, and speaking of that fire, they tried to say that some of them kids were not mentally stable and had run back in the building to get a blanket and all this stuff. Everything in this place is a total cover-up from everything since it was taken over.
That's right.
It's pitiful.
Yep. Now, in 1982, there was an inspection, and it revealed that the boys in the school were hogtied and kept in isolation for weeks at a time. And the American Civil Liberties Union, this is the ACLU, filed a lawsuit over this and similar mistreatment at a total of 3 juvenile facilities in Florida. And by this time, the Dozier School, the one we're talking about, was housing 105 boys aged 13 to 21.
Yeah, when they put these things in this isolation place, they had like a small building, and this one was listening to one thing. The guy said that when they took them in there, they opened up the door and the stench would just knock you down. It was a very small room, I think with 1 bed or maybe a bunk bed, a bucket in the corner for a bathroom, another bucket had regular water in it, and it was like size for maybe 1 person, but they would have 9 kids in there, and they would be in there for weeks.
Man. And in 1985, the media reported that young ex-students of the school sentenced to jail terms for crime committed at the Dozier School had subsequently been the victims of torture by guards at the Jacksonville County Jail. And the prison guards typically handcuffed the teenagers and hanged them from the bars of their cells, sometimes for over an hour. And the guards said their superiors approved the practice as it was part of their routine.
I don't believe none of this stuff was approved. I think they just said, you go do this, and they did their job.
Yeah.
And they did it how they wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if these people, if they knew what was going on for sure and it was approved, it's just way worse than I thought.
Yep.
It's just hard for me to believe that somebody could say, go out there and do that, and you'd know exactly what's going on.
I know.
Of course, I guess they knew what happened in the White House. But they didn't go. They had certain people who went out there and took care of business in the White House.
Yeah, we're going to get into the White House here in a little bit. Now, I know we're going all over the place and skipping dates and stuff, but there's a reason for this. We're just trying to give you some of the things that went on at the school.
Yeah.
Now, in 1994, the school was placed under the management of the newly created Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, which operated the school until its closure in 2011. Now, by this time, the school had facilities to house 135 inmates. Many of the boys sent there had been convicted of rape and committing lewd acts on other kids.
So it's a lot smaller by the time 1994 rolls around,
Yeah.
as far as what they're doing.
And on September the 16th of 1998, a resident of the school lost his right arm in a washing machine, and a lawsuit was filed against the institution, and the plaintiff was awarded an undisclosed amount of money in 2003. Probably just keep his mouth shut.
Yeah.
Now, in April of 2007, the acting superintendent of the school and 1 other employee were fired following allegations of abuse of some of these kids. The state officially acknowledged that abuse and abuses had taken place there, and the White House boys, this was a growing group of adult survivors that had been held there in the 50s and 60s. And these guys were speaking out to the press. They were coming out and telling their stories, what happened to them. And in October of 2008, several of these White House boys attended a ceremony to install a historic plaque at that little white building that was called the White House that acknowledged the things that happened there.
Right. This is when you're talking about they came in and closed it, or made sure it was closed forever and put the plaque on the door or whatever. Yeah.
And this little news conference, it carried nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And in late 2009, the school failed its annual inspection. And among other problems, the inspection found that school failed to deal properly with the numerous complaints by the boys held there, including allegations of continued mistreatment by the guards.
Buddy.
Yeah, State Representative Darrell Rowson said the system was struggling to move on from a long-standing culture of violence and abuse.
You think?
I would think so, yeah. The U.S. Department of Justice conducted a survey of 195 U.S. facilities, including the Florida School for Boys. And according to its 2010 report, 11.3% of the boys surveyed at the school reported they had been subject to sexual abuse by staff using force in the last 12 months.
Hmm.
And 10.3% reported that they've been subject to it without the use of force. And 2.2% reported sexual victimization by another inmate.
Damn.
Now, the Department of Justice said these percentages meant the home was deemed to
Neither high nor low.
neither high nor low of rates of sexual victimization compared to other institutions or assessed in the survey.
Yeah, whatever. Well, this is in 2010, so, you know, things is a lot different in 2010 than they was in 1950, 1960, with nobody knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
So
People were blind to what was going on then.
Oh, for sure. Well, they acted like they were.
Yeah.
But that's still, to me, 11.3% using force is too high, damn high. I mean, they might say it's neither high nor low, but to me, it ain't good in any number.
I know. Now, in July 2010, the state announced its plan to merge Dozier School with the JJOC, creating a new single facility, the North Florida Youth Development Center, with an open campus and a closed campus. However, the following year, claiming budgetary limitations, the state decided to close both facilities on June 30th, 2011, and the remaining students were sent to other juvenile justice facilities around the state of Florida.
So it took way too long to close this damn thing down.
Yeah, it did.
What is 111 years?
Yeah, 111 years of school going on. But we're going to get into the White House boys right here.
Yeah.
And this is what brought this school more out, and all the allegations and the stuff that went on there, Dale.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because
these boys that have been all sexually abused and beat to hell are finally in they're old and well up in their ages before they ever started talking, because they were so embarrassed and didn't want to tell nobody what happened. But once one or two of them started speaking out and they saw this stuff coming up on the news and all this, they all was like, wait a minute, I was there too. Let me tell you what happened to me.
Yeah, because these White House boys, they're a group of guys that were held there at the school in the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like we said, they began to share their accounts of abuse that they had suffered or observed against students.
Right.
Yep.
So all of them is either beat or they seen it happen.
Yep. So let me just say something here. You know, we're talking about the boys from the 50s and 60s. You know, I wonder if the group of boys from the earlier times, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, you know, they're dead and gone.
Yes, that's why they ain't talking.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe the first couple of years might have not been bad, you know. But once they figured out they can make money on these kids, and they were using every damn thing they could to send more, all hands on deck, we need more workers. Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
So-and-so's caught smoking last week, he's gone, you know. Send him out here to go work in the damn slave camp.
Yeah, I heard an interview with that one boy. Well, he's a grown man now. Said they were growing fruit and stuff there, and he said, we never got fruit
Oh, no.
when we eat.
No.
They were selling it.
And you couldn't pick, if you were picking blackberries, no, you didn't eat one while you picking, you was working.
Yeah.
You get out there and rake the yard, you didn't rake, you didn't eat that night. But you damn sure don't take nothing. If you're putting it in the basket, you don't eat it.
Yeah.
In the book I read, the guy said he went out there and he had heard all these allegations of all these kids buried out here in these fields. And he said that his house, dad or whatever was over his house, was pretty good to him as far as comparable to everybody else. And they went out one day and he said there was this big field of carrots. And he got to looking at them and he's thinking, damn, are these carrots growing over these boys? And they all started, he said, well, go ahead and pull a carrot. So he pulled a carrot up out of the ground. And he said, well, go ahead. So he wiped it. He said he took his shirt tail and wiped the dirt off the carrot and took a bite of the carrot because he told him to, and he chewed it up. And all he could think about was this growing over one of these boys.
It's very possible.
He said,
man.
never looked at the carrot the same again and don't eat them to today.
Man.
But yeah, said that you got caught eating a blackberry, you going to the White House.
Yeah, you're going to get that butt beat.
I mean, bad.
Yeah.
From your knees to the middle of your back.
And we're going to talk about these beatings here shortly.
Yeah.
But now, these White House boys, you know, these group of survivors, these grown men today, you know, they came forward and they're talking about their experiences. And there were about 400 members and survivors of the school from the 50s and 60s. And since the early 2000s, members of the group began to speak out publicly about their experiences to the media.
Yeah.
And to challenge the state to investigate the practices and personnel at the school. And more than 300 men have publicly recounted abuse and torture at the school. and the survivors have set up more than one website for this.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2009, the Florida School for Boys was the subject of an extensive report. It was called For Their Own Good, and it was published by the St. Petersburg Times.
Right.
And allegations focusing on the 1960s, including claims that one room was used for whipping white boys and another for black boys. And the facility was fully segregated until 1968. And the whippings were carried out by guards using a 3-foot-long belt of leather and metal, and were so severe the victims' underwear would become embedded in their skin.
Yeah, now this is like 2 pieces of leather. You said 3 foot long, so it's like, but it's kind of like a, I don't know if you ever put on a weight belt, like if you're going to lift weights and how that leather's thick. It was like, so like 1/4-inch piece of leather with metal, layer of metal, and then another 1/4-inch piece, and it was sewed together with a handle on it.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. Not a belt like you holding your pants up with. This thing was wide, and it was just, it was enough to where they said when they get wound up with it, you could hear it hit the wall, hit the ceiling before it hit you.
Man. And there was one former student that he said he had seen a boy trapped in a running laundry dryer at the school and suspected the boy was killed.
He was killed. In the book of Roger Dean Kaiser,
yeah.
He was working in the laundry room or laundry department when this happened, and he heard something going on. He went and peeped out the door, but he saw a supervisor coming, so he had to run back to his job so he didn't get beat. And come to find out, what had happened is there was a kid in the tumble dryer, and he was dead. And other kids later had told him that something had happened, and the guard or whatever told these other kids to throw him in the dryer and turn it on, and they did, because, I mean, what choice did they have?
Yeah.
And then turned it on, and when this car pulled up, it was like an unmarked car. So we don't know if it was unmarked cops or not, but it was a car pulled up. Some people went into the room, come out with what looked like a body in a white, like a sheet wrapped up. They just threw him in the back seat of this car, which he just fell into the floorboard, and they drove off. And he had heard that they'd just taken him out in the woods and buried him in somewhere.
Yeah, unmarked grave probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a way to go, man, in a damn dryer.
Yeah.
In the White House, they would go in there and they had a metal frame bed in a room, and they would make these boys lay down on this metal frame bed and hold the metal bars on the headboard and put your face.
And then some of them, they would tie their feet to the footboard too.
It would make them hold the bars and say, "Do not let go of them bars under any circumstances," and make them put their face down in this nasty pillow that had blood all over it. There was blood on the walls, blood on the ceiling, blood on the floors. It was everywhere. This room was a damn torture room. I don't care what they want to call it. And they would beat these boys. I mean, and they told them don't say nothing or it'd just be worse. And it could go from 4 lashes to over 100, depending on how bad they wanted to beat them. And if they screamed, whatever made it worse. And in his book, he told one time he had laid his face in that pillow and something hit him in the face, and he jumped up and looked, and it was a piece of the lip where some of these boys had bit parts of their lip or parts of their tongues off, and it was still in these pillows. They just made them use the same pillow, flip it over, and use it again.
Yeah.
And like you said the other day, that, you know, sometimes Saturday mornings they would line them up and beat the hell out of them, and they would flip the mattress over from where they was beating them into it, so it'd be humped up the other way when the next boy get on there, so he'd be more in the rear end up in the air, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And then beat the hell out of them.
God,
over and over and over. He said that Saturday mornings was for beatings.
Yeah.
And it could be for any little thing.
Anything.
Yeah. He said at one point where he was smiling one day, and the guard asked him why he's smiling back. He said, "Well, I'm just happy today, blah, blah, blah." Well, don't be doing that no more. So next time he saw him, he said, "Why ain't you smiling?" I mean, just anything. You ain't smiling too much, ain't smiling enough. Catch you smoking, oh, look out. But there was one time where he had walked up on a cigarette butt, and he saw it, and he knew it wasn't his, but that guard come around the corner, and he saw it. He said, "What are you doing?" So I was waiting on my friend to go swimming. He's changing clothes, and we're going to go. He goes, "Why are you standing right there?" So he pushed him, and he pushed him. He seen that cigarette butt under his foot. He said, "Well, they ain't mine. I was just standing there. I didn't even see it. You come up, and I put my foot on it because I'm scared." He said, "Well, you know you got to go to the White House for that, so you might as well." He picked it up and put it in his hand, lit the match, and he said, "I've never seen a one-armed man light a match before," but he lit the match and said, "You might as well smoke it. You're going to get beat for it anyway." So the boy took a puff off of it, and he said it was so short, that was it. Before he could take a puff, he had to throw it down for it burned his hand. And by this time, some other kids come running in, and another adult came around the corner and said, "What's going on?" He said, "I caught him in here smoking. He's got to go to the White House." He said, "I wasn't smoking. He goes, "We'll go over and smell his breath."
Yeah.
So the other guy went over and said, "Yeah, sure enough, he's been smoking." So he set him up.
To get a beating.
Yeah, to make it, and then did his part to make it look like it was a deserved beating.
Yeah.
So he set him up, he was going to beat him anyway. But then he made it look like legit to the other. I don't know. Man, these dudes were just trash.
That one-armed man you mentioned, his name was Troy Tidwell.
Troy Tidwell.
And he was a real piece of work.
Yeah.
He was a big man. He only had one arm, and he had lost his arm
When he was 8.
in a shotgun accident.
Yeah, he leaned up on a shotgun or dad's hunting or something, and it shot and blew his arm off.
Yeah.
So,
But the arm he did have was he was like double strong in it.
yeah.
Super strong in that one arm.
Yeah, these boys had said he had seen many a times from take a 12, 14-year-old boy, grab him by the throat, and pick him up off the ground.
Yeah. Nothing.
Yeah, when he come in there with that leather strap, it was on him and a guy named Hatton, I think it was his other guy's name.
Yeah. But there was one former student stated that he was punished at the White House 11 times, receiving a total of more than 250 lashes.
God almighty.
Other allegations, they were whipped until they lost consciousness.
I'm sure.
And the punishments were made harsher for boys who cried.
Yeah, and they said that they would see him there and they'd hear it going on, and then they would come dragging them out, sometimes dragging them by their feet, and the head just bouncing off the cement when they come out the door and throw them on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
One guy had done that he had been singing a song, and he took a beating from another guy.
For singing a song.
Yeah, well, they told him not to do it no more because he just didn't make them laugh. And then he was playing a football game. They won the game, and everybody's like cheering, sing your song. So he sang the song, and then next thing you know, they take this other boy in there, and he had said that he was him because he didn't want the other boy to get in trouble because he'd already been in trouble before. So he took the beating for him, and that was when they drug out and threw him down and goes, "There's your poison ivy."
Yeah.
Because that was the song he was singing. He'd take a beating for him. It's crazy, man. These dudes, God almighty.
But there were some alumni also stated that there was a rape room at the school.
Yes.
Where boys were sexually abused by guards.
Mm.
And the complainants said that some of the victims were as young as 9 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
And in February 2010, the White House boys, they filed a class action suit for damages against the state government. But it was dismissed by a judge in Leon County, Florida, because the statute of limitations had run out for such a suit. There was a bill introduced in 2012 session of the Florida legislature to provide compensation to victims of abuse at the school, and it failed to pass. And in 2017, the state officially apologized to about 24 survivors and families. And in 2018, the legislature was considering bills to provide compensation funds for a memorial and the creation of a task force to determine where to bury unclaimed remains. And after the land was gifted to Marianna, a mandatory study for the EPA found over 24 more graves.
More.
Yeah.
Yeah, we was talking about these beatings. People, especially people our age, when we're small, you probably got a whipping with a belt over there.
Spanking, yeah.
This is 100 times worse than that. This boy, the guy that wrote the book, and I keep referring to it because it's just so fresh in my mind, but I know there were many others that probably got worse than he did. But there was a time he took this beating, and then they took him back in there, and he went to the bathroom to go look at himself, and his back was just beat to death. And he started to take his pants down because he needed to go to the bathroom, but he just couldn't. So he decided he was just going to take pants and underwear both down and sit down and just wait to see if he could go pee. But he couldn't get his underwear off because it was embedded into his butt. He had to go to the infirmary. They had to take tweezers and pull it out of his butt.
Yeah.
And then suture him up. He was been beat and
His
cut
clothes
so bad.
had become embedded into his body.
Yes.
Yeah.
In his body, and then blood, all dried up and caked in there, I'm sure. But they had to get it out, and then they had to suture him up after that. And there were other kids that even had to go to the hospital after these beatings.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were in there giving them a slap on the wrist. These dudes were trying to hurt these boys. They said they could hear the feet coming off the floor. They were just hitting them so hard.
Yeah.
I think they were probably just seeing who could hurt them the worst.
Mm.
And they'd be lined up in there 8 or 10 deep waiting to get a whipping.
Yeah, lined up.
Yeah. You got to come Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Sit on the bench. Almighty.
Man, wait.
Yeah, and speaking of that rape room, there's a part in his book where he talks about where they come and took him out of the bed one night. And they were taking him out, and luckily his house father, I can't remember how he put it, but I think that's what the guy, the adult over his house, called him and said, "You ain't taking him out there. I'll call the cops on you," and drug him back in. Luckily, but they were saying some pretty bad stuff to it, and I'll skip that. If you want, you should read the book or at least go on and listen to it. It's not that long to listen to, but it's very good, and it's very damaging to hear what these people went through.
Yeah,
including the psychiatrist, who was just as bad, if not worse. He didn't beat them, but it was a psychologically, it was way worse on these boys and what he did and what he made them do.
Now, there was a forensic examination of the White House, and it was conducted, and no trace evidence of blood on the walls was found.
Bullshit.
And some former Dozier students told investigators that they felt they had needed the discipline. And Troy Tidwell, this one-armed man that we talked about, he was a staff member of the school during this time, said that the punishments in the White House were not excessive. He said they used a leather strap because they were concerned that spankings with these wooden paddles had previously taken place and they might injure or hurt the boys.
Yeah, they was probably breaking bones with them bad boys.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you can get up there and lie like that.
I know.
I mean, all these boys telling the same story about this one-armed man, and that's you. There's no other one. You know good and damn well you did it.
Yeah. Can't even imagine, man.
He just sitting there going, no, we might have put him some punishment, but nothing, nothing excessive. Yeah, okay. 110 times. Some of them boys taking over 100 licks.
That's unreal.
Hard as you can swing.
Yeah, there was one boy. He passed out after the first 30 licks, and then another kid there in another room told him later that he'd received over 135. He counted 135 that he'd received after he'd passed out.
Yeah. I saw one fellow, I watched another show last night, and he said that he was a star football player, and he got sent to there. And the first time they took him to the White House, he had already seen what was going on. He decided they wasn't going to do that to him. He was a pretty stout boy. Well, he broke free from them and got out and run out, and they got him, and they took him back in there. And the second time he didn't get out, and they beat him. And he said that his whole backside was just beat to death. He couldn't hardly walk. And he said, I want this known. It might be embarrassing for me to say, but I don't care. He said, my testicles were 3 times what the size they should be, and swollen up and black.
Yeah.
From taking a beating on the backside.
And it was some boys they would get, and they would take them out and have them dig some holes in the ground.
Yeah.
During the day. You wouldn't tell them what it was for. They just dig some holes. And then later that night.
These were like body size holes, not like a plant.
Yeah.
Big rectangular hole.
And then later that night, another group of boys would go out there and fill it in.
Yeah.
With a flashlight. They wouldn't shine the light down in there. They'd just fill it in.
Well, if they went out there and threw somebody in, put some dirt on top, not the whole hole, and then have them come out there to look like they just filling it back in, you wouldn't ever know.
That's right.
If it was enough to cover whatever was in the bottom of that hole, you know what I mean?
Yeah, kick some dirt in on it.
Right. So then you go, well, what are you doing? Well, they dug them, you're filling them back in. It's kind of like a second shift, kind of.
Yeah.
That way nobody knows what's going on.
I know.
To keep them separated.
Yep.
That's what I figure happened.
Probably. But in 2012, Dr. Erin Kimmerell, her team, they used ground-penetrating radar and some excavation to identify where bodies were buried. However, in order to determine if the cause of death was from injuries or illnesses or murders, the bodies must be exhumed. And given a long history of the reported violence at the school, many of the people believe that some of the students died because of abuse, like we were just talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And under existing law, exhumations can be done only at the request of a family member. But many of the burials of the students who were in the early 20th century and records made it difficult to identify the families.
Well, and we talk about her doing all this work. It was not easy to do this. They fought her and fought her and fought her.
Yeah, every step of the way.
Yeah. I mean, it was just crazy of how, first, and they had to get in there first. It was like, well, they had some family members come forward, so that helped them on their side of the fight, like you just said. But, first it was like, well, we just want to see because I think there's more, and we'll go in there and just use ground-penetrating radar to find out, some anomalies and figure out what's going on. And then they did that, and they had to go back, and each time in each next step, they had to go back and fight to be able to do the next step to find these people. And finally, they got enough families and stuff involved, and they put it on TV and how they were doing some DNA swabbing so they could go and find some people on all these unmarked graves. And once they got it on TV, they got a lot more public support, to try to help them. But I tell you what, the government did not want it to happen.
No, they didn't.
And then a lot of the local people didn't want it to happen. You're killing our economy. No tourists want to come here. Nobody's wanting to know this. They want to. You're just making all this up. This didn't really happen. You're killing our economy. I was like, do you not care about these boys at all and what happened? And a lot of people still to this day don't believe this happened.
Even though there's unmarked graves everywhere.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of pneumonia and Spanish flu. Blah, 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 blah.
But their record keeping sucked.
Well, they did that on purpose.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, there's still people who don't believe stuff happened. I mean, even when they passed that last thing, there was 3 people who voted against it. I mean, you got 70-year-old men that can't sleep without the lights being on. They're still terrified. And every one of them, almost, well, I won't say every one of them, but a majority of them, I would say, have had really difficult lives. They don't know how to love people. They've been through several marriages because it's just, they don't know how to connect.
Yeah.
It's just, this place destroyed them.
You said that Roger Dean Kaiser, he didn't know how to love until he had grandkids.
No, he'd been married, I think he said, 6 times.
Yeah.
And he said he was the most unaffectionate person anybody ever met. He just didn't know what love was. But see, he had a real bad life before this, man. When he was young, he lived in California. Him, his stepsister, and he had a new, like it was a
infant,
2 weeks or 4 week old baby.
A sister or something.
Yeah, his sister. And his mama just left him met a man and left him in the house. Well, 4 days later, when finally authorities come to check on him, he said he was sitting in the floor trying to feed his dead baby sister cornflakes to revive her. Well, it was him and his stepsister, so the authorities looked to find his mom's last, I guess, partner or whatever, and it was someone in Lakeland, Florida, who was the father of that little girl, not the one that passed away, but the other sister. So they sent him back to Florida. Well, this guy just takes him over to his mom and dad's and drops him off over there. Well, his mom and dad, which would be his stepsister's actual grandparents, let him know right quick that he wasn't actually a grandchild and didn't care nothing about him. And they would beat him and do everything else. So he's had a shit life from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, they even walked across the street to get on the swings at a school that's across the street. And his grandmother went over with a belt and beat him till the teachers come out and said, "You're going to kill him. You're going to kill him." And they called the cops. Well, when they drug him back across the road, he said he had messed in his pants because he was so scared. When they figured out what was going on then, they stripped him down naked. His grandfather grabbed some of that out of his pants and smeared it on his face to embarrass him. So then he had poop on he had shit on his face. And then they hosed him down with a water hose, and when the cops got there, he was out in the backyard holding his pants up in the air naked to get them to dry. So they took him there, and he went from there to an orphanage where he was abused and sexually abused and had to do other stuff to a bunch of stuff. And he got in trouble there, and that's when he got in trouble for climbing that tree and riding a girl's bicycle and using the bathroom without asking, and then that's when they sent him to here. Mm-hmm. Well, he was here all this time, taking these beatings, getting the hell beat out of him. He took 2 or 3, seen all this stuff. He seen that dead kid come into when he was working in the medical department, and he told the nurse, he said, I can't look at dead people like this little boy. He brought him in, took his shoes off, blood was running out of his boots. And they put him in a bathtub of cold water, and he was kind of mumbling a little bit, and she just told him to go sit in the office. And he goes, "Well, what are we going to do? Is he okay?" She said, "Well, we've done all we can do for him." And that's when you know that he had died. So he said, "Well, I can't be around this." And they sent him into the laundry and all that stuff, and all these other stories, and it just a lot of stuff. But then when it came time for him to leave, he didn't want to leave.
Yeah, I know.
He didn't have nowhere to go. He said, "Where am I going to go? I don't have no parents. Don't have nothing." So these poor boys, I mean, it's not like a Stockholm syndrome or nothing, but he just didn't, he said, didn't I win the game for us? Didn't I do this? Why can't I stay? They said, "Well, we've got somewhere to send you." So they sent him back to another place, and he ended up going to I think he went to prison. He ended up going in the Army a little bit. And then after that, when he got out and kind of turned things around a little bit, became an author, years later. But like you said, yeah, he never knew love at all until he had grandchildren.
Yeah.
Grandchildren, not even his children. But he said it was just a miracle what these tiny little humans did for him.
Oh, man.
To turn him around. So it wasn't until he was, way later in life that he realized that there's good here.
Yeah.
And it's so sad.
But this Dr. Aaron Kimmerell, the anthropologist from Florida State University, is doing all this research and digging these graves and stuff, she was doing her due diligence, doing the DNA work, getting everything tested, trying to find out who these remains, the families were. And in 2014, actually it was March of 2014, Governor of Florida at the time, Rick Scott, he signed a bill authorizing up to $7,500 per burial for families who wanted to reinter the remains of relatives that had been identified in these unmarked graves. This followed the University of Florida's report in January, which said that they had made it available to match of 21 sets of remains to known families. In addition, the bill created a task force to establish a memorial, as well as deciding on how to handle remains of bodies that have yet to be identified or claimed by families. Yeah.
And then there was also cases back, where they said that they would either be, buried on campus or would be sent back or whatever, and they would tell them whatever they wanted to tell them. There was cases where they went to go back and dig those remains up and open them caskets, and it wouldn't be nothing but lumber in them boxes.
Yeah.
They didn't even send the body back. It was just hoping they wouldn't open it and bury it.
Yeah.
There was
just 2x4s and stuff.
Yeah, just wood, because the woman said that the same lady, she was exhuming a grave because she was like digging down. It's like, well, we found it, and everybody's standing around, and well, they opened it, and it was like some hay and some other stuff, and there was nothing. They're like, where's the body? She goes, well, there would at least be teeth here if everything else was gone, and there's nothing here. This straw and stuff still here. They should have been, gone long before bones would be. Mm-hmm. So they was never in that box.
Yeah.
And this was not down there. This was in another graveyard where they had sent a body back to it, and they just wanted it checked out and make sure.
But on April 26, 2017, the state of Florida, Dale, they held a formal ceremony with families and survivors to apologize for the abuses of children at the school. Both houses of legislature passed resolutions supporting the apology, and a proposed House bill ultimately funded 2 memorials built in Tallahassee and on the former school grounds in Marianna, Florida. Did you say Pam Bondi had something to do with this too?
Yeah, she was one of the people down there that really helped, Aaron Kimmerell get stuff done. She was basically whatever I can do, anything I can.
I think she was the Florida Attorney General.
I think so at the time, yeah. So, and there was a lot of other people fighting them on it, but she was very, as soon as she heard what was going on, she was 100% in. Whatever I can do, let me know. And her office was really pushing things, especially behind the scenes, to help her get this stuff done, because they called her in and went to check it out, and this Dr. Kimmerell just went over and beyond what she had to do for this stuff, because she got really involved figuring out what was going on here. Mm-hmm. And it was just crazy.
Yeah. And in late March of 2019, Dale, there was an additional 27 possible graves that were identified during a pollution cleanup at the Dozier School site. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he directed state agencies to work with Jackson County officials to develop, in quotes, a path forward. Also in 2024, there was a bill that was to compensate the victims of the Dozier School for Boys, carried by Representative Michelle Salzman and Senator Darrell Rossman, and it was approved by state legislator and sent to the governor to be signed into law. And this was a $20 million fund for victims to receive these funds.
Right.
These White House boys, to be able to get this money.
Yeah. So I hope they, I don't know.
They're doing something.
Yeah.
But it's so sad that the ones that were responsible for this abuse and beatings aren't alive to receive justice.
Yeah. Well, even when the ones who were alive, they was like, well, the statute of limitations is up on that.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit.
What can you do?
Right. Oh, like I told you the other day, man, I don't know how many guards they had, but these boys should have uprising on some of these guys.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Took over and put them on the bed and strapped them down.
Yeah. I'd love to talk to some of the White House guys. If anybody out there knows any of these guys, we've contacted a few, but we hadn't heard anything from them. But if we get the chance, we'd definitely like to talk to them.
Yeah. Man, I can't even imagine what they went through, the hell they went through.
I just thought it was bad. In that book, it was just...
But the one boy said when, his life was so rough before he got to the school, he got there, he's like, oh man, this is going to be great. This is like
beautiful, yeah.
Disney World.
Yeah. The place is beautiful.
Immaculate, yeah. And maybe I can turn myself around and become something and learn something. And the first thing you do, you jump in the swimming pool and you slip and you say the word shit because you fall, then you go get beat 30 times for it.
Yeah. Well, that was one that happened to one guy. Yeah. They took him and beat him, and he didn't even know why. And he found out later that somebody told on him that he may have said shit when he fell to the swimming pool. May have. And they beat him mercilessly for that.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah. Yeah. But all these victims, all these White House boys, they've got the same story and they're telling the same thing.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's really infuriating to know that this kind of, it's embarrassing as somebody in this country that this kind of shit was allowed to go on for so long.
Yeah.
And they knew it. They had to damn know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, sorry. You got to go out here and go to the White House.
Yeah. But even though they stopped the corporal punishment, I'm sure abuse went on in other ways later on.
You know it.
Oh, yeah.
They say what they want to say. As long as you ain't there, you don't know.
Mm-mm.
And these boys know not to tell. That's why nobody said nothing until they was 80 years old.
Yeah.
They was embarrassed and terrorized. I mean, grown men sleeping with the lights off. I mean, you got to have the lights on to go to bed because you're still terrified from when you were 20, 18, 14, 3.
Yeah. But there's several books on this that you can read.
Yeah.
And the one by Roger Dale Kaiser.
Yeah.
It's like a 2-hour read. It's pretty good. Check it out.
Now, Aaron Kimmel's book is quite longer. It's a lot of other stuff. It's We Carried Their Bones. But if it's like, I think 15 hours on if you listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Very detailed. Now, like we told you at the beginning of this episode, there are so many trails you can go down on this.
It's layer after layer after layer after layer. And if you think about it, each and every one of these boys would have a story.
Yes, that you can learn from.
And they're all terrible. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Has anybody got a good story out of this?
No, there's no good story out of it.
I mean, they're making 20,000 bricks a day. They're doing this. They're working the fields, getting all this fruit. You're working, and basically, what it boiled down to is they were getting free labor. They were making a lot of money off this place, and anybody got out of the line or didn't want to do what they supposed to be done,
they got a beating.
They got a beating. A beating. It was basically legal slavery.
Yeah.
And the black boys got it way worse than the white boys.
They did.
And the white boys went through hell, so I can't imagine what the black guys were getting, or the colored, or the other side, or whatever. But the president for the black boys, the Doziers, he let it known that it was just slavery is all it was.
Yeah, there's a few black men that were White House boys that joined this group,
right?
And they tell their stories. You can watch some of these on YouTube and listen to it. It's horrific.
It is. Yeah, we thought we was doing something a little bit different. Give us a little, a little different angle for you guys. But man, is this damn infuriating.
Yeah. Like I said,
you start digging into this, it's like you just keep going and going and going. And I'm like, I'd go over and go, I'm telling Donnie, you just ain't gonna believe this, man. This poor guy, all this stuff he's went through. And then after all that, he didn't want to leave because he didn't have nowhere else to go.
Man.
I think at least here, he did really good on the football team. He helped win the championship, so he had that little part of it was probably really good for him, because he never had a family at all. That nobody had ever cared for him, period, except for his headmaster guy in this house who would kind of, stick up for him here and there or tell him something positive. And he went in and they forced him to box and he didn't want to box. He got hit in the face and he fell down and he cried and everybody laughed at him and he got mad and he stood up and then he went over there and just teed off on this guy. And then he went through the whole thing and ended up winning the whole tournament, but he hated every minute of it because he didn't want to do it. But, he's like, oh, yeah, you got that killer instinct. Well, somebody said that to him, and he didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to be known as anything or have anything to do with the so-called killer instinct, because that's what one of the women at the orphanage had said. He has that killer instinct and made up a story about him pouring ink in the goldfish and killing them all because he's got a killer instinct. And even the guy telling him when he was boxing, just go look at him, let him know you have the killer instinct. Well, that was so bad to him. He didn't want to hear that. He didn't want to say that was good. And, if you were in boxing, you need to go as far as, just to take the guy out, he was just taking it. It was just such a bad label. He did not want nothing to do with that. And ended up in the finals, he was going up a guy that he was actually scared of, that he had seen beat the hell out of a guy in the lunchroom with a metal plate or a metal tray, and didn't think nothing about it. That's who he was fighting in the finals. And he stared the boy down, and the boy refused to fight him, took his gloves off and left. And so he won the whole thing. And then even when he got his trophy, he didn't want it because it was something to do with that killer instinct. He said he actually, his house father was taking him back from the gym down to where their dorm was, and he let him ride in his car, and he just stuck his trophy behind the seat because he didn't want to see it, and he never saw it since.
Yeah.
That was a symbol to him for that killer instinct that he wanted nothing to do with.
He didn't want nothing to do with it. Yeah.
But he still didn't want to leave.
Because that's all he had.
Yeah. Please let me stay.
But anyway, we want to do this case because it's something a little bit different and make people aware of it, the mistreatment of these boys.
Yes. I say everybody go in to look into this, and yeah, you can get in as deep as you want.
But even today, 2025, there's still stuff being done about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a closed chapter on anything.
I've watched a good bit of stuff. There is a movie called The Nickel Boys. It was kind of adapted from this. It was I think it came out last year, 2024.
Yes.
But I have not seen it yet, but I will watch it this weekend. I think it's 2 hours and something long movie, but it was like Oscar nominated or something. But I don't know how close it is to the actual thing, so I haven't watched it.
It's just based on real events kind of movie.
Yeah, it's kind of based on, the Dozier School, but I don't really know. I haven't watched it, but I will because I'm just pretty entrenched in this.
All right, bud, we're going to get out of here, man. This is rough.
It is, man. It is. We'll get something a little bit different next week. But anyway, this is a story that damn sure needs to be told, and I'd like to talk to some of these guys if they want to come on and talk with us and keep their story out there and see if we can do something for these guys. But anyway, let's roll, Donnie.
Keep it in the media.
Yeah.
All right, bud, we want everyone to be safe. Just please be careful and always be aware of your surroundings.
Because the next episode could be about you.
This is the Crack House Chronicles.